Your iPad just died. You grab a USB-C cable and plug it in. Nothing happens. You sigh, pull it out, and grab another cable that looks exactly the same. Same port, same connector, and the screen lights right up. You stand there staring at both cables in your hand thinking, wait, am I losing my mind? No. You are not losing your mind, and you are definitely not alone. Microsoft collected diagnostic data from millions of computers and found something that should stop you in your tracks. 27% of PCs with USB 4 ports had shown a limited functionality warning right after a user plugged in a USB-C device. Plugged in perfectly. Light came on, but the features they needed, it just did not work. That means nearly 1 in 3 people using the most advanced USB-C ports out there have felt exactly what you just felt. And none of them knew why. The problem you thought was yours alone turns out to be a problem affecting millions of people, documented by Microsoft itself. And the answer to all of it comes down to one small, quiet truth that almost nobody ever says to your face: USB-C is not a feature. USB-C is just a shape. Welcome to Secrets of Everyday Things, the channel where everyday secrets are uncovered and explained. To understand why that matters so much, let us go back in time a little. Not that far, just to the late 1990s. Back then, if you wanted to print a document, you plugged a parallel cable into your printer, and it printed. If you wanted to connect a mouse, you plugged PS2 into the green port, keyboard into the purple one. If you needed to move data to an external hard drive, you plugged in SCSI, tightened the screws, and said a little prayer. Every cable had its own shape, its own job, and you never mixed them up because they all looked completely different from each other. The tech life back then was like a professional kitchen knife set. The bread knife looked nothing like the chef's knife, and you never grabbed the wrong one by accident. Then USB came along. Universal Serial Bus. That name sounds pretty impressive, right? Universal. And honestly, in the beginning it actually was pretty simple USB Type A. That flat rectangle you always flipped around twice before getting it in. Only needed to do 2 things: carry power to charge stuff and carry data to move files. That was it. Everyone was happy. But then the world started asking for more. And that is when everything got complicated in a way nobody warned you about. USB-C showed up in an era when a single port was expected to do absolutely everything. Charge your phone, charge your laptop, transfer huge files, drive a 4K monitor, connect a dock, power an external SSD. That tiny little oval connector was being asked to do the work of 7 or 8 different ports that used to live on the back of your computer, and to pull that off. Engineers made a decision. Instead of creating a new plug shape for each job, they would keep everything looking the same on the outside, but make what is inside completely different, depending on what the cable needs to do. That decision changed everything. And it is also the decision that makes you want to throw your entire cable drawer out the window. Inside one USB-C cable, there might only be 2 wires, just enough to push some electricity through. That is what people call a charge-only cable, and plenty of manufacturers still put USB-C on the box and sell it with a straight face. A different cable might have more pathways inside, enough to move data at real speed. Another one adds dedicated wiring to carry a video signal. And the best ones have a tiny chip inside called an e-marker, which acts like a built-in ID badge that automatically tells your charger, "I am rated for heavy loads. Go ahead and send more power. I can handle it." If the cable does not have that chip, the whole system plays it safe and caps the power way down. That is why you can have your laptop plugged in for an hour and the battery barely moves. Now let us talk about the thing that makes people laugh and groan at the same time. The Apple situation. Did you know that Apple itself sells cables that look absolutely identical, but perform completely differently? Their Thunderbolt 3 cable, 40 gigabits per second, up to 100 watts of charging power, full support for video output to an external display. Their Apple USB-C charge cable, sold at the same time, also white. Also that same oval connector, looks exactly the same. Data speed 480 megabits per second, that is 80 times slower. No video support whatsoever. If you have been using that second cable to connect an external hard drive and wondering why your file transfers feel like you are watching paint dry, there is your answer. Your machine is not broken. The hard drive is not cheap. You just had the wrong cable and nobody told you. And it gets even more painful if you are using an iPhone. The USB-C cable that ships in the box with a standard iPhone only supports USB 2.0. That is the speed standard from the year 2000. If you want to hit transfer speeds up to 10 gigabits per second, you need to buy a separate USB 3 cable. And that only works on iPhone Pro models to begin with. In other words, you could have two iPhones sitting side by side, both with the same looking USB-C port. And backing up your photos to a computer could take dramatically different amounts of time based on the cable in your hand and which model you bought. This is exactly what one viewer described after plugging a new iPhone into his 2018 Chevy pickup for CarPlay. He tried every USB-C cable in the house. Nothing worked. He spent a week searching online. Almost gave up entirely. Turned out the cable he was using was a charge-only cable with no data wires inside at all. The problem was not the truck. It was not the iPhone. It was just the cable. Then there is fast charging, which is honestly one of the most confusing parts of this whole story. The system called power delivery, or PD, works on a principle that is actually pretty clever once you see it, instead of just blasting electricity the moment you plug something in. Your charger and your device do a quick handshake first, agreeing on a safe power level before anything flows. Texas Instruments describes how this works through what are called CC pins inside the USB-C connector. This is where the device and the charger exchange tiny signals to confirm the connection. Figure out which way the cable is oriented, and decide how much current can safely move. It sounds technical, but it is really simple. The charger will not send power until your device raises its hand and says, "I am here and I am ready." And that is exactly why cheap gadgets you order online sometimes refuse to charge using your good C-to-C cable. Those little devices, the mini fan you bought for $10, the bargain flashlight, the Bluetooth speaker from a sketchy listing. They often skip a tiny component called a pull-down resistor, the part that creates that raise your hand signal, just to shave a few cents off the manufacturing cost. The result is that your high-quality C-to-C charger simply does not recognize that anything is connected and refuses to send power. But if you dig out that old A-to-C cable from the back of the drawer, it charges just fine because USB-A delivers 5 volts the old-fashioned way. No handshake required. That is why you should always keep at least one A-to-C cable around, even if you think you have fully upgraded to USB-C. The USB Power Delivery 3. One standard has now pushed USB-C all the way up to 240 watts, with voltage levels at 28 volts, 36 volts, and 48 volts corresponding to 140 W, 180 W, and 240 W respectively. What that means in plain English is that the tiny port on your laptop could theoretically power a gaming monitor. Run a high-speed SSD and charge your battery all at the same time. One port, everything, but only if you have the right cable. The world is catching on to this at the policy level too. The European Union passed a law requiring USB-C as the common charging port for all handheld devices starting in December 2024, expanding to laptops by April 2026. They estimate this move will eliminate around 980 tons of electronic waste every single year and save European consumers at least 250 million euros annually, because they will not have to keep buying new chargers every time they get a new device. This is no longer just a story about a cable. This is the infrastructure of modern daily life being rewritten. But standardizing the shape alone is not enough, because as you now know, USB-C is just a shape. So what do you actually do about it? The short answer is this: read the specs printed on the box or on the cable itself. And stop buying by feel. The USB Implementers Forum, the global organization that sets USB standards, has rolled out a new logo system that lets buyers immediately identify whether a cable supports 60 watts or 240 watts, and what data speeds it can handle. just by looking at the symbol printed on the connector or the packaging. If you want one cable that handles almost everything, look for one that clearly says USB 4 or 40 gigabits per second and 240 watts. If you need to run a dock, an external monitor, and an SSD all at once. Thunderbolt 4 or Thunderbolt 5 is worth the extra money because Intel built Thunderbolt 4 around stricter rules, a guaranteed 40 gigabits per second, support for two 4K monitors at 60 frames per second, and full speed maintained on cables up to 2 meters long. Less guessing, less frustration. That is what you are actually paying for when you spend more on a Thunderbolt cable. And once you find a cable that actually does everything you need, do not let it disappear into the chaos of the drawer with all the anonymous ones. Label it. Keep it somewhere separate. Because the thing that is really stealing 15 minutes of your life every time this happens is not the technology itself. It is the fact that you have to play cable roulette all over again. Remember using cassette tapes? You always knew which tape had music on it, which one had a movie, which one was blank and ready to record because they had different sizes, different cases, and usually a handwritten label stuck on the side in someone's messy handwriting. Nobody ever grabbed the wrong one. Nobody ever sat there wondering why the tape was not working. That old clunky system had one thing that USB-C is desperately missing clarity the moment you look at it. That is exactly why thousands of people in comment sections everywhere are inventing their own color coding systems, their own label schemes, their own ways of telling cables apart at a glance. It's not because they are too lazy to read technical specs. It is because the industry never did the job it should have done in the first place. That little cable sitting in your drawer is not just a cable. It represents a system that was designed with genuinely good intentions, meant to make life simpler, but ended up creating an invisible layer of complexity that your eyes cannot detect. The plug became universal. The experience never did. The next time you reach into that drawer and grab a cable to plug in, remember this: you are not picking a cable. You are choosing between a dirt road and a 6-lane highway. And they both look exactly the same on the outside. To make sure you get the highway every time, check the specs. Look for USB 4 or Thunderbolt in the label. Find the watt and gigabit ratings printed on the box. And buy from a brand with USB IF certification. Do that once, and you never have to play cable roulette again. And if you are sitting right now with a cable in your hand that you cannot identify, here is the question worth asking. What is the strangest cable you have ever held onto in that drawer, the one you have absolutely no idea what it goes to, but just cannot bring yourself to throw away?